the next level is Eros, and a lot of times we think about Eros and then Agape, but you've got actually Eros 1 and 2, and then Eros 3 and 4.
Right.
But both of them are under the level of romantic love.
Right.
If they're the same, how are they different?
Yeah. Well, of course, romantic love, does involve sexual feelings. It does involve, a sensitivity to the beauty of the opposite gender and so forth. It clearly has that adventure of romance that's intrinsic to it. So all these things are part of Eros 1, 2, 3, or 4. They're always going to have those characteristics involved. And of course, Eros 1 and 2, this refers to my levels, the 4 levels of happiness.
From your earlier works.
From my earlier works. And Eros 1 pretty much is, I live for the sexual gratification, that comes, from, or the pleasure that comes from sexual gratification. And of course, you could get that from pornography. Is it profound? No. Is it destructive? Yes. Can it turn you in on yourself? Absolutely. Can it destroy your maturation so that you're incapable of generativity in the future because all you care about is sexual satisfaction? Yes, absolutely. Porn can destroy you. But that's Eros 1. And people say it's love, right? Mm-hmm. And of course, so that idea of Eros is out there. Eros number 2, though, remember, level 2 is kind of ego comparative. So there's a recognition of the other, but you're in the driver, you're in first place. So it's not the other first, it's me first. And so there's a confusion in Eros 2 that when, somebody loves me, that's love. When someone has affection for me, that's love. When someone admires me greatly, that's love. I don't think so much about loving them, supporting them, helping them, being with them, unifying with them, right? So I haven't reached a stage of generativity yet, right? I'm just thinking basically, I must be in love. I feel so good because that person admires me and finds me, a good partner, in terms of not just a generative relationship, but also a romantic relationship, finds me a good partner. Now, there's something to be said that's good about having that kind of an ego boost.
So do couples pass through that on the way to 3 and 4, or should they be,
They retain some of it too, and that's healthy.
The concern that it's if you get stuck there.
Yeah.
And then maybe you end up with a situation, kind of a mutual using of each other.
Yeah, and that's right. And that's, of course, once you're into that, right, then, of course, all you need is one good ego contest, and the whole thing's going to blow up. Because really the other is not first. There's not a commitment to the other per se, or a commitment to the relationship, staying together. What you have is there's a commitment to maintaining those feelings of Eros and those ego comparative feelings of Eros that I'm getting. I like that, but of course, hey, what's this? You're making demands of me? Mm-hmm. Hey, what's this? What do you mean I got to stay home?
That's where pornography fits in so well, because it makes no demands. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Does it also have the same kind of thing that the experience needs to always become more intense?
Yeah. I mean, once you reduce romantic relationship to feelings, and it can also be ego feelings combined with sexual feelings, right? Libidinal feelings. So once you've got this combination, I'm not saying those things are bad. I mean, obviously, marriages, have a great deal of ego feeling, which is good, and a lot of, sexual and libidinal feelings that are good. But I mean, if you reduce, romance or Eros to that, then of course you're not going to ever get to a level of commitment. You're never going to get to a sustaining relationship that'll sustain a family, right? That'll, the covenant love that Saint John Paul II talked about, right? You're never going to get, that idea, that ideal of marriage that Jesus was trying to call us to. And what is that ideal of marriage? Number one, I'm looking out for you. Number two, I'm looking out after your salvation. as important to me and more important to me than anything else. Number three, I'm looking out for the family that we're raising together. In other words, my priorities have shifted out of mere sexual gratification, right? Mere felt sexual gratification, mere ego gratification combined with that sexual gratification. Even though it's there, it is now somehow, subordinated to the salvation of the other, subordinated to the relationship, subordinated to the children and to the family, subordinated to, the good of the other per se, and of course, then when our good, we find gratification within that priority structure, then of course, it really does not only support the commitment, sexual and ego feelings support the commitment, but they also support, really, the family that's going to benefit from it. So to make a long story short, it is complex, but it does require passing through what I call, the stage of merely sexual feelings and ego feelings.
And that's on page 37 in your book. You've got like a little chart there. And openness to the importance and inclusion of intimacy, complementarity, collaboration. And then you note sexuality, beauty, and romantic excitement are still important, but contextualized by the above, which is what you're saying. Now, the other one you mentioned earlier in the show, agape. We hear kind of like this, we should be shooting for agape love. You say agape is its own reward. How so, and what is it?
Yeah, well, first, agape is really a term that started to be used precisely because of the Christians. After Jesus gets finished defining love in the Beatitudes, and St. Paul defines it in 1 Corinthians 13, etc. Once the Christian definition of love is out there, they were casting about for a word, and of course a Greek word, because they're living in a Koine Greek context in this commercial Galilean world, right? And so they're looking about for a word, and they light upon agape, because it's not a word used very often by the Greeks, and it's disposed toward Jesus's view of love. And of course, they couldn't use eros. That wasn't what Jesus really, what we've just been discussing. That's not what he was talking about when he was using love. In fact, eros is not really used in the New Testament, right? Philia is used sometimes in the Gospel of John, but not that often, and of course, storge, that's just a feeling. That's not going to work. But they find agape. And what does it mean? Essentially, it's the kind of love that doesn't have a reward built into it. So, right, in eros, I've got the romantic reward, right, the sexual reward, etc. But there's a reward that comes back to, in friendships, right, philia, there's a reward that comes back to me, the mutual commitment of the other, whereby, there's a unity with the other, whereby doing the good for them is just as easy, if not easier, than doing the good for myself. And that's a reward, so something comes, and of course, storge, it's a feeling. It kind of is a reward. My little nieces burst into the room, and I go, yay, they're here, I'm happy, I got a reward. But for agape, for Jesus, what that is I see the other as an intrinsic, mysterious, ensouled, uniquely good and uniquely lovable reality. And in seeing this in this other human being, the eyes are the windows to the soul. What happens is I'm kind of galvanized for a moment, right, by this goodness, this mystery, this uniquely good and lovable other. And what I want to do is make sure they're okay. I have a note of compassion. I want them to be okay. I want, that them somehow to that law of beneficence to apply to them. I don't want harm to come to them, certainly not through me. There's a moment then of empathy and sympathy where we're kind of galvanized by this goodness of the other. And what do we want to do? We'll do the good for the other just because the other in and of himself or herself is worth it. We call that intrinsic dignity.
Now, do we have to jump in a river to prove it?
On occasion you might have to, but in many cases.
Well, you quoted somebody in here talking about a particular Broadway show and a story, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, but for all intents and purposes, though, yeah, poor, Gilbert. But the long and the short of it, though, is when you really get to the notion of agape, though, it really is for the other, for the sake of the other. And so agape can be the font of three kinds of love, which Jesus is very anxious for us to embrace. Number one, forgiveness. You can't derive forgiveness, right? Forgiveness occurs when somebody's done you a terrible wrong, right? You're already, you're hurt, you're wounded from something that seems to be, intentionally done to you for no good reason. Now, you can't motivate forgiveness from Eros, right? You're not going to have a lot of romantic feelings for someone who's just stabbed you in the back, right? You're not going to have a lot of friendship feelings and reciprocity for someone who's just stabbed you in the back. And you're not going to feel a lot of affection for someone who stabbed you in the back. But you could have agape. You could see, even in someone who stabbed you in the back, someone who has intrinsic worth, someone who is intrinsically, uniquely good and lovable, transcendent, worthy of salvation, having an eternal soul, worth, forgiving for their own sake without getting me any reward. That would be agape. Same thing with compassion for the marginalized and the sick. There's nothing about the marginalized and the sick that's going to draw us to themselves. Like, it's are you going to have Aristotle's friendship for somebody who's marginalized or sick?
Think of Mother Teresa with her canonization coming up.
That's right. That's pure agape.
Right, exactly.
That's pure agape. But yeah, you're not going to motivate it out of philia or eros or storge.